let's go. If you want it, you can get it, let me know. Hi, welcome to I Ain't Finna Read That. Back in my natural habitat. Woo! We outside, baby. Hi, this is a book I read. It's called Frankenstein, or the Modern Day Prometheus by Percy Shelley's wife. This was like from the 1800s, and it sucks. You shouldn't read it. So there's like a famous story about Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley and Lord Byron having a menage a trois or a writing contest, and she made it like overnight. I'm not gonna tell you that story because I didn't look it up, and I'm sure it's easy to find, so do some research. So Frankenstein is a story about a college student who learns how to reanimate bodies. So he makes a body, really big body, that now that it's alive scares him. So he abandons it, and then he feels guilty, not because he abandoned this thing that he made that he doesn't like, even though he made it. He feels guilty that he made it, even though he's made other things. He doesn't feel guilty about animating other things. It's just this thing he feels guilty about. And then eventually the thing comes back and starts killing everybody that's close to Frankenstein, and now they're locked in mortal combat. And then the story happens. So this is certainly a this would be tight premise, right? But also, it's not really good. Like, she doesn't execute it very well. Like, there are a lot of people who've made movies of this premise, and the movies are better. Like, 5 things happen in this whole book. It's not very exciting. It's mostly just like Rick Steves' Europe, but it's Frankenstein going from town to town and then being sad about stuff. Also, if you wanted to cheat and watch the movie with Bobby De Niro, don't do that because it's definitely not the same. It's called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but it's not. That'll be that. Now I'm gonna get to the part where I start spoiling everything. Skip here if you don't want me to spoil everything for you, so you can get to my final thoughts and my major gripes and all that stuff. Okay, now let's start the show. So it starts with like letters. It's someone else's mail, like lots of other books from the 1800s. You're reading another guy's mail. Some English explorer dude is talking to his sister who's in England, and he wants to go to the North Pole so he can find a quick route across the world from the top. So when they're up there, they get caught up in the ice, because it happens. Like, ice is up there, it's ice, okay? While they're in the ice, waiting for it to thaw, they see some big cat MFer in a dog sled, just like hightailing it across the ice. And then the next day, when there's a little bit of ice melted, right, and they can move a little bit, they see some poor sap also on an ice floe, but just like up there getting called, like, oh, let's save this guy, yoo-hoo, come up here. And the guy's like, well, first off, where are you going? Like, he's not gonna die on that little ice joint. He's on. But they're like, oh, we're going north. He's like, all right, well, let me in. So he goes in there and he's sick and he's dying, but then he eats food and he gets better, and then he's obviously Frankenstein, but she doesn't drop his name because why would you do that? They're like kindred spirits, the explorer and Frankenstein. And so the explorer, so Frankenstein tells the explorer his life story of like, oh, you want to explore and be the first guy to do stuff. Well, that happened to me once, and let me tell you my story of woe. And so then the rest of the story is the explorer telling his sister what Frankenstein told him, even though it's clearly, you know, like the author, the narrative voice is very, very different. Here's the thing, like, the narrative voice will definitely change in this book between the explorer and Frankenstein's monster. They all have varying levels of storytelling ability. The monster being the highest and Frankenstein being the lowest because he's so navel-gazing. I just don't care about what this guy has to say, his freaking feelings. So he's talking about his family and his mom and dad, and he's from freaking Genoa. For some reason everyone thinks Frankenstein is German, but he's just an Italian guy. When he's 5, the family adopts some little girl because she's cute, like cuter than the rest of the kids. You know, I'm not gonna read into that. They adopt the girl and tell Frankenstein, this is yours to take care of. And he's like, oh, that's my wife, great. And everyone kind of knows, okay, we adopt this little girl and then they're gonna marry each other one day. Everyone just kind of knows it and they're all cool with it, right? Again, I'm not here to judge these people. Am I? And they call each other cousin. Like she calls him cousin, and mom and dad the aunt and uncle, and ew, just don't say that. And he's growing up and he gets really interested in science, natural science, but he's studying like old alchemists, like Paracelsus and Albertus Magnus are the two that are like his rocks, like the people that he really likes to study up on. And when he goes to college, he tells one of the guys at the college, he's like, oh, I studied Paracelsus and whatever, Archimedes, whoever the hell. And he's like, oh, you're an idiot. You gotta start all over again, dude. Once he starts learning all the like science and like the gadgets of chemistry, he starts to make improvements on those tools. And those tools are like we're talking about molecular mass here. This is not simple stuff. So he's legitimately got an aptitude for this science. And eventually he learns the secret to reanimating bodies.
Whatever happened there?
So he's like animating little rabbits or whatever. I don't know, he doesn't say for sure, but he's not animating 8-foot tall people like he decides to do eventually. He wants to animate an 8-foot tall guy. And he's upset that there's an 8-foot tall guy running around. That's what happens. He builds a guy, and he's like, oh, why did I build this guy? Like, he could have built like a Gary Coleman, and you wouldn't have been like so upset about it, because you could just like lock the door and not be worried about Gary Coleman going through and then strangling everybody that you know. Instead, you made Andre the Giant. Whose fault is that, Frankie? Or Vic, whatever. But yeah, he animates this guy like in his apartment, just where he is. And I don't know how he's getting these body parts. He doesn't say like explicitly anything. And that's one of the big problems with the story, is that there's no detail when it comes to the fictional science in the science fiction story. There might be an allusion to electricity, maybe, but nothing more than a whisper of a hint. Not enough for you to read this book and go, oh, that's what she meant. No. Even at the point when the monster wakes up, there's no drama in that scene, because it's entirely inward looking. That whole moment when the monster wakes up, suddenly Frankenstein is upset. Frankenstein has to leave. There's no sense of where he was in the room, what the light was like, no sense of the hard work. There's no like sensory information of Frankenstein doing anything. There's just telling you the end result of whatever work is supposed to have been done. That's not storytelling for real. So anyway, 8-foot tall guy wakes up and, oh, he's hideous. Well, you made him hideous. So he goes and he just leaves the guy in the other room and goes to like hide in his bedroom or something. Because that's gonna solve the problem. Just run under the bed. That should just clear everything up. And through all of this, he's not riding home or anything. No one knows what's going on with Vic. So one of his homies comes up and is like, hey, how are you doing, guy? How's college? And he's like, oh no, there's a monster upstairs. Oh, but I'm glad my friend's here. I get to not think about the crisis I'm in currently. So then he goes upstairs and he's like, oh, I guess I'm gonna have to show my friend the monster in the room that I made now. And he opens the door and he's not there. And he's like, woo, the monster left. Good, all of my problems are solved. But then he gets sick because, oh no, Vic is a mad scientist. He's like upset and he's freaking out. But he gets sick, he gets better, he writes home, he switches majors, blah, blah, blah. Time passes and his little brother dies from strangulation. Someone strangled his little brother. And he sees like the black mark. He has to go back home, right? Okay, he went home. And he sees a black mark on his little brother and he's like, oh no, I know who did this. It was the monster who strangled my little brother. How would you possibly know that? They out here saying that the family's servant girl strangled the little brother for the necklace that he had, because she was found with his necklace in the folds of her dress. So then they go through a kangaroo court. She ends up dying, getting hanged. So then they're all upset, and Frankenstein goes and just travels north to the Alps or whatever, and then he's up there and he's thinking about dying. And this is most of the book is him going through. All the stuff that I'm skipping are the meat and potatoes of the book. Like him, he's going through the Alps. That's like a chapter and a half of him going up the Alps and describing the freaking Italian countryside. It's not driving the story forward. I don't know why she did that. He goes up there and he's like, yeah, I could die up here. I was when I die. And then out in the distance he sees some big cat, cat as in person, running toward him, and lo, it's the monster. And now the monster tells his story, which is the only part of the book worth reading. So I guess at this point it had been a year. So the monster's about a year old, and he's telling Frankenstein, okay, I woke up, right, and I didn't really know one sense from the other, and I'm walking around and I'm bumbling, and people are being mad at me, and they're pitchforks and torches wherever I go. So I'm like, all right, I'm not talking to people no more. He ends up freaking hiding out in a hovel in the countryside, I guess somewhere in freaking one of the German states. And he's shacked up next to a French family. It's like an old man, and a brother and a sister. And he's just like looking at them through the slats. He's like, oh, look at these beautiful people. They're having this little life. And he's just happy for them. But they don't look happy. He's like, why aren't you guys happy? You're freaking beautiful. What's wrong with y'all? He sees like the young man like chopping wood for the fire. He's like, I'll just give him some wood. So he's like collecting wood for them. And he's like noticing that they're happy about the wood. He's like, all right, my guy is like what I'm doing, hooray. I might have happiness here. And he ends up learning how to like read and write French, because like there's like an interesting story about their whole life in France, and them being in exile over here. And an Arab girl comes to marry the young man, and she learns French from them. So he's like, well, this is a ripe time for me to learn French. He realizes that the old man is blind. So that's probably his best bet if he wants to get like face to face with these people he's come to love. So he sneaks up to the old man when the young people are gone, and he's like cozying up to him, and he's trying to like, you know, be nice and woo him essentially. And then he gets, he almost does it, but like before he can really like cement good standing, the young people come, and then there's pitchfork torches. They drive him away, and he's like, oh no, I'm so sad. So, well, if I can't have love and connection, then I'll just start killing everything, because that's at least some joy. I'll just start hurting things and people. So then he's like, oh, I'll just run away, and he runs away, and he's just getting shot by people, and life sucks. And he sees some little kid, and the little kid's like, go away from me, you monster. He's like, I'm not a monster. I'll tell my dad, Mr. Frankenstein. Your dad's Mr. Oh wait, I forgot to tell you that he also has Victor's freaking diary while he's building the monster. So that's how he learns who Frankenstein is, because he's reading like, the guy who made me freaking hates me. That sucks. So then the kid's like, oh, my dad's Frankenstein. Like, oh, your dad's Frankenstein? Well, I'll kill you. He kills the kid, and then he takes the little thing on his freaking neck, and he finds the girl and he puts it in her dress, and he's like, well, you did it now, tee-hee, and he runs off. So he tells Frankenstein, okay, all I want from you is to build me a wife, okay, because I got nobody. Just give me somebody, some other ugly, you know, wretch who no one's gonna like, so we can just be not liked together, and then we won't mess with you or anyone else on the face of the earth, all right? And if you don't, then I'll kill you and all your family, all right? We got a deal? All right. So he tells us folks, right, I gotta go away and gotta do something. But they're like, okay, well, come right back and then marry your cousin, or whatever we're calling her now. Go, him and his family go, and she takes forever explaining their trip up to Scotland. She gives you no detail as to him making the monster's wife, you know. I can imagine while he was in college, he could go to like the morgue to get body parts or something, or you know, somewhere in the college would be something like that. But now I'm like, is he just digging bodies up from graves? Suddenly we're at the point where the monster's almost finished. Hooray, the bride of Frankenstein is almost done. And then he sees the monster through the window being like, hey, all right. And he's like, damn, what if this thing has like monster babies? Or what if she doesn't even care and just wants to kill things anyway? What if I'm doing more harm than good? And he just freaking destroys the wife right in front of him, which, I mean, I guess he could just still patch it back up again, right? So, I don't know. I don't know the rules to this. There's no explanation. So the monster's like, oh, how dare you? Goes and he's like, why, what, we had a deal, yo, and the deal was off. man, not building you a wife. He's like, all right, well then I'm gonna be with you on your wedding night, homie. Just keep that in mind. So he's on the trip back to Genoa, and his homie ends up dead, right? And then the monster blames him for it. And he's like in arrest somewhere in Ireland for it, and then he gets free because we're just trying to fill up time here. Okay, he ends up going back to Genoa, and he gets married to Elizabeth, and he's like, oh, I gotta freaking be on guard because it's me and the monster are gonna die right now. We're gonna fight to the death. So you go to bed, Elizabeth. I got something to take care of. I got man stuff to do. And so she goes to bed, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna fight the monster right now. Then he hears her screaming, and he's like, oh, I'm an idiot. So he goes to the room, and she's dead. She's got black stuff across her neck. And he's like, oh, the monster did it. And he tries to shoot the monster goes away. So the rest of his life he's chasing the monster, and the monster's going north and playing cat and mouse with Vic, and he goes north and up, because the monster can deal with extreme cold. He can deal with more stuff than humans can, which makes me think, I don't know, maybe like he just has less nerve endings, or maybe something about the embalming process has dulled his senses and made him more resilient. Again, I'm putting more thought into this than Mary Shelley did. We get to the point where he's up in the North Pole, and he's chasing the monster, and then he's on the ice, and the ship comes, and we're full circle, baby, we're back. But on the boat now, they're talking mutiny. The boat people are trying to explore, like, hey man, we almost died up here from the ice. When this thing thaws, we gotta go back south, dude. We don't wanna die up here. Vic is like, are you guys serious? Y'all call yourselves explorers, and the first time y'all get a little pushback is, we wanna go home, it's too cold. But you knew when you got here it was gonna be life and death the whole way through. What kind of men's is y'all? So they sleep on it, and the next day they wake up and they're like, yeah, we wanna go home, we don't wanna die up here. So that's what they're gonna do. And Vic is like, well, I gotta keep going north. I still got work to do, I gotta kill this monster I made. But he doesn't do that, he just gets sicker until he dies. And then the monster climbs on board, and he's like, boo-hoo, my dad's dead. And the explorer, who I know speaks English, and I'm gonna assume speaks French, because I can't assume that the monster speaks English. The monster's telling the guy, well, this is what I had to live for, and I don't want to do this, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna go and die, blah, blah, blah. Don't think it'll take forever, I'm gonna die, blah, blah, blah. And he takes forever talking about how he's gonna die, and I'm up here like, well, we're all waiting on you, pal. But that's the end of the book. What, 1.5 star, I'm gonna give it, because it's so boring. It's just descriptions of the countryside and Frankenstein being sad about stuff. That's the whole book. And I'm not saying that Mary Shelley can't write, okay? There's some bars in this book, like some really good, like lyrical prose happening here. But as far as storytelling, not a lot of like, it's just so boring. It's just filler, a couple of scenes and then just filler, just words that don't drive the story forward. Like even when there's supposed to be suspense and terror, it's just Frankenstein saying, then I was terrified. There's no kind of sensory information that would elicit the feeling of terror or any like sympathy. Yeah, describing yourself being histrionic and describing the story, the freaking route you took from here to there, that's not gripping storytelling. And I guess the monster had the best storytelling because you had to follow the growth of his consciousness from not being able to tell one sense from another to fully understanding that he will always be an outcast in this world. And every little thing that happened to him that struck an emotional chord with him was important. Here's the funniest thing about this book. There's never a moment in this book where Frankenstein is powerless and can't do anything about the mess he's made. He's always able to make a better decision than the one that he's made. Like when he wakes the monster up and decides to scurry to the other room and hide. If he was that upset about the monster waking up, couldn't you just like kill it real quick, right? Isn't there like a scalpel or something nearby? You could just nick an artery. I know the monster can be killed by normal means because midway through some dude shoots the monster in his shoulder and the monster gets sick, he's losing blood, he has to take a bit of some downtime from that wound. So it's not like the monster can't be killed. And then all his homies and his friends and family start dying, and then he's upset about his friends and family dying. But like, doesn't he like literally know how to reanimate corpses? Can't he just like patch them up right quick? Does he have to start from scratch every single time? And then like, yeah, okay, maybe it won't be the same soul going into the new body, but he doesn't know that. I don't know that. You know what I mean? There's a lot more that can be done. He could have told what he was able to do to his university, right? And like instantly become a member of the university and just maybe catch it to rabbits or something, right? Don't have to jump to people. It's because you don't have to jump to 8 foot tall people just because you can. Even if he let the monster loose and he went to the university or whatever and just told the university about what he could do, that would have been better than just being like, oh, I gotta protect the world from this information because we shouldn't know this. That's, nah, man, I'm not with that. And then he's like, what if the monster makes babies with this wife I'm building? Like, you're building the wife, just snip the ovaries, boom, problem solved, let them go. I don't know, I'm just a guy. That being said, the monster describing his story really was worth the price of admission, you know. I'm sitting there, I've almost got a tear in my eye. I'm like, you're right, dude, people are so mean. But boy, oh boy, this freaking story. This is the problem with like books, why people say books are so boring, is because books like this exist with these words that just don't even have to be written down. Like, you could tear out 75 pages in this book, you wouldn't miss a beat. You're giving literature a bad name. Man, there's something freaking, homeboy, what's his name? Another LA legend, Bukowski had this video, and I'll just play it right here, boom.
When you write, your words must go like this. Bim, 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 bim. Each line must be full of a delicious little juice, flavor. They must be full of power. They must make you like to turn a page. Bim, bim, bim. What these guys do, they say, well, in blah, 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 da, 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 there was a porch chair. The flies were walking around. You see, they're too leisurely. They're setting up the scene for the grand emotion. And when they get to the grand emotion, there isn't any.
When I saw that, I was like, yes! Exactly, like, don't bore me. Like, it's supposed to be entertaining. The point is to be entertaining. The point isn't so that you can put it on your LinkedIn profile. Anywho, that's the story, folks. Yeah, that's it.